right. Well, welcome everyone to the Summer 2 FDI presentation. And this morning, I just want to say thank you for everybody being here. I know summer is hard to all get together, but we will be sending out the recording of this. Those of you who are program directors, we suggest that you grab the recording when it comes out and send it to all your adjuncts. We really feel like a lot of these can be super helpful to our adjuncts as they engage with the students and as we deal with each other. And this today is definitely one of those that you want to send out. So I hope all of you had a chance to take the emotional intelligence assessment that we sent out. If not, go back and look at an email from me, Brenda McAdoo. And just on behalf of the FDI committee, I just want to welcome you, and we would love your feedback about what other courses and classes you would like to hear from as we start planning for the next year. All right, so I'd like to introduce our speaker now. So Jeff Frey has been a practitioner and a scholar with over 25 years experience in helping people through technology, business, and emotional intelligence. As a VP of Innovation and Business Development here at ACU, Dr. Frey is helping us bring our education to corporate partnerships. And with a diverse background in nuclear and space science, which I want to hear about that, both oil and gas and higher education, he understands the modern workforce. His research interests on the human side of that work, which is what we're going to talk about today, and why and how emotional intelligence can be paired with AI to help companies, teams, and individuals really flourish. He holds a PhD in emotional intelligence from Case Western, an MBA from Rice, and a master's in computer science from Kent State. Beyond the professional and academic achievements, he's a dedicated husband and a worship pastor at his local church. So, Dr. Frey, we will turn it over to you now.
Thanks. That's great. So yeah, I can tell you the quick story about my journey to this topic. I was telling some folks that got on, and I see Joe was on here and some other stuff, but I was a technology guy. So master's degree in computer science, heads down coder, shove food under the door, don't make eye contact with people. And you have worked with those types of people before, or they're in your family or something, those tech nerds and things. And so I thought, well, and I worked on nuclear aircraft carriers and submarines. So I was doing algorithms for nuclear propulsion units. And I worked for NASA for a little while and did a lot of tech stuff. As I was doing that, somebody put me in charge of a few people, which probably shouldn't have been done. I feel sorry for those people that they put me in charge of. And I went and got an MBA because I thought that would do it for me, and that didn't quite do it. So I went and got a PhD in emotional intelligence. And again, I was telling some people before some of you got on, my wife is a marriage and family therapist. She's a marriage counselor, which is another whole talk we could have about that, but that'd be after hours later that we could talk about. But she'll say, yeah, Jeff knows a lot about emotional intelligence. I don't necessarily have a lot of emotional intelligence, but is a learned trait, can be learned, skill to be learned. And so that's kind of what I've been doing. Is I've been training and teaching data scientists, analysts, tech folks, and then in the business world, how to up their EI, and been pretty successful at doing that to help people get jobs, extend their careers, and all that kind of stuff. I was Chief Digital Officer at MD Anderson Cancer Center, so #1 cancer center in the country, and how to create a digital space to have more EI in that. We partnered with Disney and did all kinds of stuff to try to get that place, which is arguably the worst place to be on the earth, from the happiest place on earth, try to blend those two together and really bring technology and AI, and some other things together to benefit that. So today we're just going to talk about EI a bit. If you haven't been exposed to the concept, it's going to be a real quick, simple, kind of quick hit at it. And then right now we actually are at Baylor University, the Baylor College of Medicine here in Houston, and we're training their faculty on how to integrate EI into their courses, because they've been getting they feel that, and they've been getting reports that maybe some of their graduates don't have as much bedside manner or empathy or EI as they would like. And so we are attempting to work with them, given my background and some other things. So ACU has a certificate program, and we are alongside Baylor training their nurses. We are coming in on top of that every month and having personal conversations with their students and training them in that. It's been really interesting to be involved in. So anyway, that's this. In the chat, you can see if you have some questions, go ahead, throw them in there. Brenda's gonna look at that for us and make sure that, you know, asks any questions that come up. I'm gonna pause a few places. There's not, you know, a ton of us here, so if you want to come off mute and just ask a question, do it at any time, and we'll go through it. Okay, let me share my screen and show you what I put together. I labeled this harnessing the power of emotional intelligence. I think emotional intelligence is, you know, a topic, we'll define it here in a second, that if you can up it, great. If you have a little bit and you can harness that little that you have, great. I mean, that's really where I'm at, because I don't propose to get a ton of it here as I move along in life. So I think what we have, we harness it and then we work on it. So what we're going to talk about today, and I will say this too, you know, most of the time I use a lot of videos and I have some interaction stuff, and people do that. This, because you all are who you are, I'm just going to talk at you for a long time here, and then you ask questions. And if you want this to be interactive, please ask questions. We're going to talk about emotional intelligence, the importance. So we define it, the importance of it. Like, why do I care? Who cares? Self-awareness, which is one pillar of EI, and really, and there's no order to it, but if there was an order, I would say you start with self-awareness and then you reach out from there. We're going to just talk about that one. Stress management. So EI, and a lot of my research is in burnout and how emotional intelligence can help you keep from burning out. So I just want to touch on stress management, because that has been a big deal here over the last couple of years. Whenever I go to talk to anybody about this, they bring out the stress management side, and then how to integrate it into potentially instruction. You know, what could you be doing to help up the EI of students and people in the classroom? And then obviously Q&A. I put that at the end, but it says there, and you can read slides as well as I can. Please feel free to ask questions at any times. Use the chat or hold till the end, however you want to work it is fine. Okay, so learning outcomes. Typically with something like this, you would also say, what's a learning outcome? I just want you to up your EI a little bit. That's it. There's one learning outcome, and you may have already done it if you've taken the assessment and looked at that. That is a little bit more self-awareness, and so that's it. It's pretty simple. We talked a little bit about me, practitioner. This slide was just so that you know that I know what I'm talking about. That's really all it was for. Kind of obligatory, but I went through the corporate world, got into academia later in my existence. I still blend the two right now. And then entrepreneurship, innovation, I've always been on kind of the edge of a lot of stuff. And hopefully I'm still there with even the things that we talk about. So emotional intelligence, what is that? This is Daniel Goleman. Daniel Goleman and Richard Boyatzis are the two researchers that came up with the term emotional intelligence. There is a book, if you would like to know. This is the emotional intelligence book. This is, there's a ton more. There's one right here that is Emotional Intelligence 2.0, and that is a more recent one that is not by Goleman, but this is kind of the one that everybody uses. I got the opportunity with my PhD. I figured if I'm going to study emotional intelligence, I should go learn it from the people who came up with it. Daniel Goleman, Richard Boyatzis were on my dissertation committee, and I was able to kind of study underneath them. They liked the fact that I wanted to study the things that I was studying, and actually called them before I started the degree program and asked them, look, if I'm going to do this, can you all be my chairs, and would you take me on? And they said yes. And so I entered a degree program to do that. So that that book right there will give you a definition, and this is what it says inside of it. Emotional intelligence refers to the capacity for recognizing our own feelings and those of others, for motivating ourselves, and for managing emotions well in ourselves and our relationships. Okay, so let's break that down. You can read again as well as I can, but I figure I need to on this one. This is an important one. The capacity for recognizing our own feelings. So going through life and being able to name how you feel. That's kind of 101. If you feel a certain way, it's like, wow, I can't describe this. I don't know where this is coming from. If that's something that you deal with, and I have a 9-year-old and an 11-year-old, and man, the 11-year-old, he'll come up and he can say, hey, I'm sad, or that makes me angry, or something. And the 9-year-old is just, he basically just runs around the house, or, you know, he doesn't have those words. He doesn't have that framework. We're working on that with him. And so there's people that go through life and can figure that stuff out, and then other ones that don't. So recognizing those feelings, well, I'll take that a step further and being able to recognize that in another person, body language, speech, just the feel of energy in a person. We are where we are, so we can talk about prayer, and we can talk about how the spirit helps us discern things in other people. And so if you can recognize your own feelings, that's kind of step one. And wow, if you can recognize someone else's feelings, step two. So now that I've got that, well, what do I do with it? Well, I would regulate my own feelings. I would regulate myself. And I may be able to, and I'm going to use manipulate in a way that is not a derogatory term or negative, maybe potentially manipulate another person to help them through something, maybe act a certain way to help affect what they are. So that's where you get motivating myself. What can I do in my own self? And by managing emotions, and then relationships, right? So now I've seen other people and I'm able to do some things with them. So think about someone in your existence that that you do this well with, potentially, where you know you just know how they feel, you know what's going on. They call you and they say, hey, guess what? And you're there with them. And then there's other people that are distant that it's like, I have no idea what's going on there. You know, some days they're up, some days they're down. I can't tell. I wish I could do that better. There's people like that in our existence. The first place to start is yourself and understanding that. So the framework here, let me show you a couple frameworks, because we're academic in that mindset. His framework in this book was there's 5 pillars of emotional intelligence: self-awareness, self-management or regulation, motivation. You had empathy and social skills. And he called those out and named those. And we've used that framework a lot as we've gone through. That has been kind of pushed down into this 4 quadrant. And that's where this book comes in. And Goldman is fine with this. I talked to Boyatzis 2 weeks ago, and he's got some new research on a personal sustainability index that he's working on. And they're using this framework too. So if you think about it, we have personal competence and social competence. That's what we know about ourselves and what we know about others. And then it's what I see, my self-awareness, or I have social awareness, we've talked about a lot. What I do, I can have self-management or relationship management. This helps kind of break it down into 4 quadrants. A little easier to look at than the 5 pillars and trying to discern through those. So this is what we've gravitated to in the world of EI, and said, okay, look, why don't we talk about EI in this context? While it's easy to see, you can be good in some areas, bad in other areas. You can have great relationship management without having social awareness. You can know another person, you can understand that, but being socially aware is more of that social competence and with other people and groups and things. So I figure I show you this. And a lot of the slides here are kind of greatest hits. Like, at lunchtime today, I saw a talk on emotional intelligence. Oh yeah, well, did he show you the 4 quadrant, blah, blah, blah? Oh, no, he didn't. Well, that's trash. You know, so I have to kind of show you obligatory, like I got to show you this, and there's a few other ones I want I want to show you. A lot of times we get asked things like, what is EI compared to, IQ, or sometimes we call it EQ, emotional quotient. And EQ is really that score derived from standardized tests and measuring intelligence. But EI, there's not necessarily a score. There's not a test. There's not an assessment that's been like, that's the one that's out there, but there's a ton. And it says those with high EI are able to manage their emotions, use emotions to facilitate thinking, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so that's kind of definition. Thoughts, questions, issues, concerns. What's anybody have anything? Good. Keep rolling. All right, let's do it. Don't hesitate if you have something going on. Importance. Why do we care? Well, we talked about they're able to self-regulate. You're able to do this. Self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relational management. What is that? Well, what does it mean to maybe even us specifically? We talk about self-awareness, understanding where you're coming from, understanding what's happening inside of you, understanding what your emotion is, helping you better identify that will help with stress management, will help with your ability to maybe get over that faster if you'd like to, or sit in it more if you'd like to. Sometimes we go through life, our existence, and we just let things kind of happen to us. And inside those feelings come and go. Being able to recognize them and understand them, and then potentially go to self-management, potentially say, I don't necessarily want to feel like that. I have a quote that I think I'll use later that says, anybody can get angry, but getting angry at the right person at the right time, that's the trick. Like, that's hard to do. And that's kind of how I feel. Even I'll go back to my kids. My kid will be doing something and I'll look at him and I'll say, hey, I don't know that I want you to do that. And we're very loving and caring, but there's sometimes I got to go, hey, stop it. And I go, is now a time to say stop it? Do you think I need to raise my voice? Let's think about this. And you almost have this secondary person outside of your person, and you're looking at yourself. But there's a lot of times where I'll be with somebody else doing something and I'll just say stuff and I'll do it. And that person that's looking back at my person going, why'd you do that? That was dumb. Like, what? Or if you're one of those people who something happens and then, you leave the situation, you're driving in your car, you're like, you know what I should have said? I should have said this. And you come up with that. The trick of that self-management, self-awareness is having that like person that's you looking over your shoulder at all times going, I think you might want to do this here or this there. The social awareness side really will help us with interactions with each other and students. And then the relationship management, of course, if we understand the social awareness, we'll be able to do the relational. Down at the bottom, having high EI is pretty much essential for us because, it'll help us better work with each other, interact in a positive way, and then regulate emotions for stress management. And I think that is, again, a big thing. Stress has been a big thing where we've talked through, and I have a whole section on that I'll talk about. What else? People with high EQ, no. And again, some of this is going to be, I've said this maybe 3 or 4 times now. The idea of the repetitiveness here is kind of get it in different ways, effectively recognize and manage emotions, empathize, understand the emotions of others, communicate feelings. Down at the bottom left-hand corner, clear and constructive manner. One of the things that I look at is in our speech, I don't know how many feeling words you use, but if it's contagious. So you'll find in your relationships, if you're not sure how a person's feeling or you'd like to know more about them, if you say something like, as you're interacting with them, oh yeah, I did this yesterday and I did that and all that. How about you? And oh yeah, I did this, I did that. And if you can say something like, yeah, we went here and I felt really good about it. Or I felt like I had and you put some feeling words in there like it was really relaxing, or man, I've had a lot of stress from that or something. You'll find it's contagious. Other people will feel like they can use that with you. They don't even know it subconsciously. They just start doing it. And that starts to get feeling words put in there. You can start to up your self-awareness by using those words, but other people will reciprocate. And so you can get social awareness from that. Navigate and resolving conflicts with respect, have better relationships, and then down at the bottom, staying composed during challenging situations if you want to. If you don't want to, you can manage that, and you potentially could not be calm if you want to not be calm. That's how that works. So those are benefits. In education, there's tons of research studies out there on, okay, well, what does EI do for teachers? What does it do for faculty members? What does it do for higher ed? What does it do for K-12? And so there's improved communication, better leadership, increased empathy, reduced stress. You'll get these slides later. I can give you tons of references to current articles that are out there. And then I would say the classics that are out there that show you, hey, look, this is important and this is why it's important. Okay. Emotions solve problems without thought, good or bad. Normally it would kind of get you all to go, maybe do a poll or something, say, is that a good thing or a bad thing? It's both. Emotions solve problems. We love to solve problems, and solving problems is great. Our emotions come in typically before the thoughts. And so emotional or creep up, and I'll show you a diagram of a brain here in a second, but an emotional crop up. And sometimes it can be very beneficial that emotion comes up and you take care of that right away. If something's happening, my kid's in danger or something, there's an instinct that takes over and there's something that happens. However, in a situation where maybe you wanted to think about that a little bit more, the emotion cropped up and took over, and you potentially did not have a chance to think through it ahead of time. Back to that driving in your car, and it's like, you know what I should have said? Sometimes you're driving in your car after a situation, you go, I wish I wouldn't have done that. Like I should have said something else. A classic one, the slap, from an award ceremony here with Chris Rock and a couple other people. I showed that video where Will Smith, he's talking about his wife. Will Smith walks up, slaps him, gets back down. You could see it. It was an emotional response, just happened. I'm like, what is that guy thinking? Boom, slap, sits back down. Right afterwards goes, yeah, I probably shouldn't have done that. That was not, and so, there's some examples of that in the world. What happens? I was able to, with Boyatzis, do some fMRI studies of doctors, nurses, people in helping professions that have an emotion and then have a thought take over that emotion and have to deliver maybe some news to some families or something. Which parts of the brain light up and when and how? And wow, the spinal cord comes up and there's a feeling system that gets hit first. And if you're not adept at letting that feeling system get through its work to get to a thought right afterwards, and you just cut it right there, then you're just acting on feelings. There is there's a system that travels back up to thinking rationally. And really, if you can take the thinking rationally and push it back down to the feeling and then communicate between those two, the better that pathway and the faster that pathway is. That's where really emotional intelligence comes from. It comes in that pathway. I have a high cost of, we call it a high cost of switching. If you are task-based and you're like, I work on my computer here, I'm working on some stuff and I'm very task-oriented, and my wife comes along and goes, hey, Jeff, you know what just happened to me today? And she starts talking about stuff. And I really love her and I really want to be engaged, but I got this task thing that I was just doing and I got to switch over there. It takes me a while. And what my normal thing to do is go, well, why didn't you just do this? Why? Oh, that was, what just this, and what she really wants is, wow, that must have been really hard for you today. Yeah. And go through that. It's hard for me. And then if I'm doing that and I'm in that mode, getting back into work, it takes me a while to get back into work. It's like, where was I? What was I doing? How does that thing? And I got to almost go to the front of my document and read through the whole thing again to get back to, okay, I'm in this system thinking again. So there are many people who have a very nanoseconds cost of switching in here. And that's where we learned from the nurses and the doctors that some of them can go straight from an emergency room operation to a family back to an operation. And when they do that, it's for them low cost of switching. For someone like me, high cost of switching. Okay. So in this book, this new book, it says the daily challenge of dealing effectively with emotions is critical to the human condition because our brains are actually hardwired to give emotions the upper hand. Back to this. It really, the brain is wired so that the emotion crops up first. And, if you think about situations that need that to happen, thank goodness that I didn't have a chance to think about it. You see a lot of that stuff on the news. I didn't even have a chance to think about it. I just did this. That's great in a lot of situations. That's going to save your life. Bad if you're trying to empathize with your wife at times or something. That's that. So that is kind of what it's about, why we care about it, and self-awareness would be the first pillar of emotional intelligence, to be that upper left quadrant from this book. And I just use a quote here: the greatest of all faults is to be conscious of none. The fact that you don't know where you don't know, you have some blind spots and things. And so this, for those of you who took this, very simplistic, free, simplistic. If you've taken an Enneagram, if you've taken Myers-Briggs, all the cool kids are using Enneagram these days. Myers-Briggs, the disc profile. This book, at the end of this book, if you're interested, it has one as well, fairly simplistic. At the end of the book, it's got a little code here that you can take. I think it's like $14 or something. And this one did self-awareness and then talked about other awareness, this emotional control or regulation. It did call out empathy because a lot of people were interested in that. And then that stress management around well-being. And I got a couple responses. I got a couple responses that I kind of want to just show you what that looked like. Let me drop this over here and show you. So what this says is, what is your type? It's like, oh, I'm the intuitive, or I'm the poet, because they have to come up with something catchy, right? Everything has to come up with like a name or a catchy thing. And so it's like, what is this? Really what matters is kind of down in here. This is from one individual, and this was from another individual. And if you look at it, this is really quick to interpret. Self-awareness. How aware am I of the emotions and the things that are going on? And again, free assessment, not a 20-minute, 30-minute, hour-long thing that you take. Normally, I would have a manager, a coworker, and a direct report take these about a person and do a kind of a 360. In most of my research, I have a significant other or a spouse take it, and that is where the most true information comes, is from the significant other or the spouse of an individual. So, self-report 75. What does that mean? Well, I mean, if I was completely self-aware, it'd be 100%, which means I know what I'm feeling at all times, and I've got it. I've got myself down. 75. So that's telling me I've got a little bit of work to do there, but I'm good. I've got a C if you think about it that way. I'm passing, right? And that's in the work there is journaling. The work there is identifying where those feelings come from, doing the work inside of yourself to be able to understand kind of what you've got going on. Then you get to other awareness outside. You've got to emotional control, the empathy and well-being. This individual, like I'm pretty good externally. And you know what? It's not affecting my health or well-being at all. I've rated myself, again, this is a self thing. I've rated myself, depending on the questions that I answered and how I answered them, I rated myself kind of low on empathy, which I could up, and self-awareness. The fact that self-awareness and empathy are kind of aligned makes a little bit of sense, in that you yourself are thinking about how am I going to get with my own feelings. Oh, and you know what? If I can't figure myself out, how am I going to figure something else out? Empathy is just putting yourself in someone else's shoes, right? Is being able to feel what that is. I go to a friend of mine who, if someone in the room is crying about something or is sad about something, they start crying. and what's going on there? I don't know. I just feel for that person. It's like, great. So you're what we would call an empath, and you can sense what's going on with another individual, and then you can, you basically feel that as well. There's a great clip from the movie Inside Out. I don't know if anybody's seen Inside Out. It's a Disney movie, and it's got these things in your brain, and there's joy, and there's sadness, and there's anger, and they're all fighting up there trying to figure out, no, I want the controls, I want the controls, I want the controls. And there's this great introspective deal where joy is trying to make somebody happier that's crying. Hey, oh, we're going to get there. It's going to be fine, and everything else. And sadness just sits down beside the person and goes, that's pretty rough. And joy tried for a long time to get that person to stop crying. Once sadness sat down beside the person and said, it's pretty rough. Yeah. And started to just recount what happened, the person got through it, stopped crying, got up, and went and did what joy needed to do. And joy looked at sadness flabbergasted and went, how did you do that? And do what? Like, sadness didn't even know what was going on. That's the empathizing. That's the getting with the person, getting in with them, understanding what they're doing, and then helping them get through that. And do that. So anyway, this, as opposed to something like this, hey, highly self-aware, I could figure that out. Empathetic. So I figured myself out, and I can empathize from other people. The other awareness might be low. I can empathize with another person, right? I can do that. I get what they're feeling and everything, but just aware of the other things that are going on. And then emotional control being low, that would be that management. So you can see scores can be all over the place. And the definitions here of what they measure and how they're measured, these are all the same. This is, no matter what you look at, these don't necessarily change and say, well, this is what you should or shouldn't do. What you need to do, if you look at this and go, I'd like to dig more into this, is go find a real assessment, maybe a book like this or something that you can get into and work through that. But this is a good start, just literally on self-awareness and being able to do that. That's why I tell people to go and take any type of survey or something online. This I don't know why I keep bringing up the book, but I will. I'm not getting paid for this book. I should get at least a quarter or something. The front side of this book, if you look at this little binder here and how it works, the front side of this book is basically definitions and what's going on with EI and why it's important and all that. And then the little gray slots on the book, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. This matches the 4 quadrants, 1, 2, 3, 4, that we saw earlier. And inside this gray side of 1, this is self-awareness. This would be self-regulation, social awareness, and relationships. It's got 15 different strategies for how to increase your self-awareness. And I almost treat it, you wouldn't read it cover to cover. It'd almost be like a reference book. And you can, of course, get online and search strategies to up your emotional. These are just the first 5 that they have in the book. And I think it's interesting to just put these kind of first 5 up here. Quit treating your feelings as good or bad. When a feeling comes in, you go, oh, I shouldn't feel that way. You know what? Ditch that feeling Don't say that. Feel it. Get in there, figure out why you're feeling it, and then go, if I want to let it go, I can. If I don't, if you don't have the capability to get out of it yourself, go find someone to sit with you and get out of that. Journaling helps. There's all kinds of things. But first of all, naming a feeling as a bad feeling or a good feeling, they're just feelings. They are. And I put some clouds over there because there's a mindfulness technique that's really popular that, if you've ridden in a plane before, it can be raining and everything. And then all of a sudden you take off and you get through some clouds and it's pretty rough. Then once you get above the clouds, hey, sunshine. Wow, it's sunny up there. You know what? It's sunny up there 24/7. Well, except for when the moon is out, right? It's always sunny up there. So if you can figure out how to get yourself up there in your mind in one way, shape, or form, and a cloud is a feeling, and there's a rainy cloud that comes by, and there's a thunder cloud that comes by, and then there's this happy cloud and other things, and you look at them and you go, yeah, I'm going to let that go, or I'm going to hold on to that one, or I'm going to let that one flow by, or I'm not. That's a mindfulness technique that works really well with individuals that are trying to grapple with their emotions. Observe ripple effects. Hey, look, I've got this emotion. Then what happens? How does that work? Lean into your discomfort. This one I highlighted. We tend to also try to ignore or minimize unpleasant emotions. Back to sadness, sitting with this person. Sometimes sitting with the emotion gets you through it faster than trying to beat it down and saying, I shouldn't feel that way. Feel your emotions physically. Another great mindfulness technique is kind of a body check. Sit in a chair, ground your feet on the floor, go from the tip of your head to the toes and think, where am I feeling something right now? Where does that hurt? Where does that, my neck is stiff. I've got my cheeks feel tensed up. I've got some, squeezing in my hands that are happening. Where are you feeling that? And then attempt to muscular release that. And then it'll help the emotional side of things as well. And then know who and what pushes your buttons. This is a really important one. If you can absolutely feel the feelings, but being able to figure out what your triggers are. Let me go over to here. Triggers sometimes, one of these is more prevalent than another that makes you feel something that you potentially don't want to feel. Some of us don't care if we feel blamed about something, but other people, that just sets them off. Feeling trapped, feeling like you couldn't speak up, or manipulated, or forgotten about, or unsafe. These are all kind of negative things, triggers that we come up with that you could say, wow, one of these is something that I really would like to focus in on. That's something for me. And you can think back to someone who made you feel like that. Now, again, sometimes we avoid those situations. There's this I'm gonna make it up, but imagine there's an individual that every time that you speak to them, you kind of get into it a little bit, or there's a disagreement. It's just that rubs you the wrong way. So what we do with that? Well, we leave that situation. We don't call them person. We avoid their office. We do those things. My recommendation for that is to get in there. Go call that person right now. And be the individual outside of you, looking at you, and watch what happens and what's going on, and think about, what is it about that? Why is it? Nail one of these down and see if you can figure it out, and then potentially work through that. The other person has some work to do too there, obviously. They're being a jerk to you or something like that, but for you, what is it that causes you to do that, and what could you do to make yourself potentially not feel like that the next time that you have to interact with a person like that? Okay. Triggers. So stress, and we're gonna move through stress pretty quick, and then get on to instruction. But I wanted to pause here and ask any other questions or thoughts or something that's going on that you've got so far.
One question, Jeff, was what's like a best practice that you can do to work on your maybe your awareness of others, not just yourself?
Yeah. So honestly, I go back to this book, and I'll just really quickly kind of read you off a few. There's a few in here that I like that are I guess, classics. And there's a couple other books that I like. Like there's one book called How to Make People Like You in 90 Seconds or Less. I'm not necessarily and it's a very quick read. It's like this thin and it's a little handbook. And what it says is, hey, if you walk into a room, if you walk into a meeting and everybody's leaning back on the chairs and they're all kind of talking about their weekend, and you get in there and go, okay, here's what I mean. You're really intense. They're all going to go, oh, that's right. Or if they're all intense and talking about it and you just walk in and casually like lean back in the chair and go, whatever, that is obviously not going to work. And so this How to Make People Like You in 90 Seconds or Less is you look at them and you model them or match them. What are they talking about? How are they standing or sitting or whether, and if you do that subconsciously, they go, I like this guy. I don't know what it is, but I like this guy. Well, they like me because I am you. Like I and you like yourself a whole lot. So that kind of thing, being able to look at body language, being able to listen to feeling words, being able to listen to those things and really take note, calling, a lot of people tell me their names and it goes in one ear and out the other. As you hear a name, lock into it, and start to really take that person on as a study. This is Jim. He's this. He's got. Ask some questions about what their family is doing or what their day is like or something. And then if you can ask a couple feeling words, those things get at that. But in here, this talks about, number one, greet people by name, watch body language, develop a back pocket EQ question, plan ahead for social gatherings, which is kind of what I was just saying. Watch EQ at the movies. That's pretty interesting as well, is in there. Go people watching. Honestly, if you can guess, if you've got somebody that even a close group of friends, you can say, I bet this person is feeling like this right now. And you have the courage and the vulnerability to go, hey, are you feeling like this right now? And they go, absolutely not. You go, I'm off. Tell me how you're feeling. And if you had someone that you could work with that, it honestly helps a lot. Test for accuracy. That's what I just mentioned. Catching the mood of the room. So yeah, there's honestly, the practice of it is the practice of it. That is what the only thing will do it. And you've got to check to make sure you're right to guess. Does that help? Yeah. Okay. Let me talk about stress real quick. Short term, stress can be good. Put some stress on you. You get that deadline done. You get that thing done. Absolutely. We've got some healthy stress and things, but when activated for too long, then you've got this fight, flight, or freeze response that happens. And if you stay in that too long, then it can damage all kinds of stuff inside of your existence, not just your emotional state, but it has effects physically on the body. So these are just a few quotes. This is back to that angry quote. This is an Aristotle. Anybody can become angry. Absolutely. That's easy. But to be angry with the right person and to the right degree and the right time and for the right purpose and in the right way, that's not within everybody's power and really isn't easy. So, if you think about that and being angry as a thing that you can activate and you can measure up and down and you can turn the dial on, that would be a true state to be able to get into when you get into this kind of things. And then that's out of this book. Again, it can be argued that emotions are neither good nor bad. We just talked about that. But they can be experienced as pleasant or distressing. I don't like this emotion. I do like this emotion. That doesn't necessarily correspond to their value. A negative emotion can send you in some great places and help you throughout. We talk about stress. It can help you finish something. It can help you stay away from a person that is harmful, all that. The goal is to understand the range we might experience and achieve some clarity on why we have them and how we can use them constructively. So how can we manage stress in the moment? This is happening right now, not long term. It's happening now. What do we do? And these will send the slides out, but thinking differently, some way of going, okay, look, I'm feeling this and it's an emotion. How can I think about that emotion differently? On the right-hand side, there is back to kind of your body, there is a physical, there's a physical activity that you can do by clenching and unclenching certain parts of your body that help with the emotional side of things. We talked about the mindfulness on the right-hand side, and then distraction. Not the same as avoidance. Avoiding something is I want to get rid of it. I don't want to be there. Distraction would be navigating your way through it by thinking about something else tangential to it, finding something that effectively takes your mind off that stressing situation. That's in the moment. And then, for me, as you think about the things that you do to manage your stress, and if you've got a method of doing that works for you, I would think through how you could potentially communicate that to other people. Part of the joy of having a community of people that we work with and we have things that we can do is not just hearing from me about like, oh, well, this is what research says, is saying, well, this is what we do. So upping your emotional intelligence this week might look like there's other people on the call here. You know some of them, you don't know some of them. A random meeting with somebody for 15 minutes, I would welcome that from anybody. A random meeting like a coffee talk where you go, hey, we had that thing that Jeff talked about. What did you think of that? Oh yeah, I thought that was trash. I didn't really like, but I know better than that or whatever. But you get together, you talk about it and say, we all have stress. Why don't we share some things? So I have actually a company that I'm working with right now through one of our ACU connections, and they have a shared document where they put their stress handling tips and tricks on a document, and they keep that circulated. And as it comes up, what's been funny about that is people can recognize when the other person is doing it now. And so they're saying, are you stressed? Yes, I am. And they couldn't recognize that before. It helps in all kinds of ways. So I don't know if that's something that you all want to engage in or do or something like that. But at this point, if you've got a few people, and we call them resonant relationships, if you've got a few people that you can share this with, could be family members, friends, team members, spouse, significant other, dog or cat sometimes works too. It'd be interesting to kind of share that around with folks. This is one of the last things I'll say, and then we'll get to kind of integrating it in your classes. A lot of the research that I did is on burnout, and on the upper left-hand corner, this thing we call a sacrifice syndrome, where if you're constantly reacting to other people's emergencies, crises, threats, there's a lot of stuff going on around you. If you're constantly doing that and you're just kind of putting out fires and you're not taking time for yourself, you're giving without receiving on the left-hand side, upper left. And then you get back into that reactive and you kind of take a downward spiral in your health, well-being, and all that. You're doing what's okay for other people, but not necessarily yourself. On the right-hand side, there's a renewal cycle. So on the bottom right, if we can be proactive and kind of plan for some of that stuff, we're still going to have emergencies, crises, and threat. But what we can do is we can find some resonant relationships that we can practice mindfulness, practice hope, practice compassion with them. And then we can get back into that cycle. I don't think that sacrifice and self-stewardship are mutually exclusive. I think I would love people, and I study nurses, doctors, I study clergy and nonprofit organization leaders, and I tell them sacrifice. I love that. And that's how we progress and the world progresses. But while you're doing that, make sure you engage in some self-stewardship practices. And what do those look like? literally on the bottom left, walks in nature, lunch with a significant other, a phone call from a friend, playing with a child, and there comes the pets that I talked about. And that playing with a child doesn't even have to be your child. If you're just playing with a child, it actually ups your levels of renewal. So if you can find some of those that it's not like, oh, every Saturday I do this. I mean, literally, it's got to be injected into your day, week, month, year. And maybe that year is a bigger vacation of some sort. But if you can take this variety of things and just in the middle of a day do something that ups your renewal, then it goes a long way for upping your EI and your stress. Okay, last questions. I saw a couple more chats come in. Anything pertinent? All good? Okay. This is classic. Obviously, some people think with their wallet, some people think with their heart, some people think with their head, some people are motivated by that, some people are pushed by those things, and some people are tugged by those things or pulled. And with students, it's hard to really see. Sometimes they're enrolling in a program because they want a better job, so they're motivated by their wallet. Sometimes there's thinkers, and they just love the love of learning is there for that class, that one class, or multiple, and so they're doing with their head. And then some folks think this is going to benefit my family, or this is going to benefit me, or I want to do this, especially when there's a helping profession like nursing or marriage and family therapy or something like that. They might be led by their heart in certain situations. And so the goal here is to tie some of these things together. And too many words on a slide. I teach in some cases I teach presentations, and I would give somebody a bad grade if they put this many words on the slide. But I asked a couple of you ahead of time if this was okay, because I'm going to give these to you later, of integrating emotions into your courses. Just like we're doing it at Baylor, the idea is if you can up the emotional intelligence of the people that are in your classes in one way, shape, or form, then they will actually do better, not in the class, not only in the class, but in their life, in their existence. And so in these opportunities that we have to give assignments or to talk to folks, if we can add some reflection or self-awareness activities, what does that look like? Well, a journaling exercise about how did you feel about that assignment, or how did you feel that kind of stuff as an assignment. Collaborative projects, obviously that's going to get people into teams, but just throwing out, oh, you've got to work in teams on this. Well, do they have to work in teams, and do they have to collaboratively come up with a solution? How did they do that? Did everybody get a voice? Making, instead of saying your team has to come up with an idea, say, I want you to turn in an idea from every team member. I want you to then turn in your narrowed down thoughts on those ideas. And then I want you to come up with the one that you came up with. Well, what does that do? Instead of the main person getting into the room and saying, taking over and going, this is our idea, doesn't everybody want to do this? And the quiet people go, yes. What that does is that shows that everybody had to say what their idea was and explain it. And then they had to narrow it down and do some negotiation. And maybe still the loudest voice in the room got their take, but at least these people got to voice their ideas. So there's ways of putting your EI, of upping the EI of your teams, of your students into projects like that, and then case studies and real life scenarios as much as possible. And those, a lot of times we'll take, business courses, for example, we go, oh, what the case here is this, company did something bad in the to the environment, and they lost revenue. And so contrast that with the company who did something right and gained revenue, and show, compare and contrast. And we really talk about the numbers. Oh, $140 million, something here, something there. We don't necessarily go, how did they feel about that? How did it impact the individuals in that? And having them have to come up with analyzing maybe emotions, motivations, reactions of leadership or individuals or something like that. To me, that kind of thing is something that you could do and as well. So it's really simple things inside your assignments and the prompt that you have for an assignment to be able to kind of slip some of this stuff in that helps the EQ of your students. Okay. Last thing I'll leave you with, feedback. A lot of times we have to give feedback to people, and it's very transactional, specific. Next time you have to give feedback or you want to share an emotion with somebody, there's technique, when you, I feel. When you and state a fact, something they can't argue with. So that's a fact, something that somebody did. I feel as if you, blah, blah, blah. When you say that, they can't or shouldn't argue with your feeling. So this is what I'm feeling. It's like somebody can come back to you and go, well, you shouldn't feel that way. Like, okay, but I do. That's how I feel. That's my feeling that this had. And using that, and sometimes that doesn't work as well with students because you have to kind of grade them on this thing or that thing. But letting someone know, hey, when you use ChatGPT to write 90% of your paper, kind of feel like you're disengaged. Or I feel like, and really going after that. And I've had to do that a couple of times, specifically that example. And it comes back with, I'm sorry, professor. And instead of, coming at them with something like that. So anyway, that happens in life and students and other things. And so I kind of leave you with that tip to be able to go through that. All right. That was it. That's my cell phone number, text, call. That's my email address. I'm always willing to have these types of talks with anybody and go through, some of this that I've learned from you on what I can incorporate into my next talk on this subject. It's been fun to navigate as a tech guy through this kind of subject matter, and then try to get that out to as many other people as possible. So I appreciate the time and the thought of having me here this morning, and hopefully that's benefited you all some. Any questions or thoughts that you all have that you'd like to kind of talk with the rest of the group? Again, I'm available outside of this, but something for the rest of the group here.
All right. Well, if anybody doesn't have any questions right now, I just want to say thank you, Dr. Frey, for being with us and sharing that. One, it can push all of us onto that journey where we can kind of know a little bit better about ourselves, but also about other people so we can strengthen our relationships. So thank you so much for your time. And we will be sending out Dr. Frey's slides in this and the recording from today. Appreciate you guys being with us.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. Take care.